Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at the Soundcore by Anker, AeroFit, and AeroFit Pro. These are their latest generation of wireless buds, having more of a sports emphasis with a open design, which they're calling as Air Conduction technology. It's not quite the same as bone conduction tech, but rather still uses a conventional speaker or driver, just placed a little bit closer to your ears, but benefits can include higher audio performance, and more importantly, this is still an open design, so it doesn't stick all the way in like a more traditional silicone tip. As a result, you can kind of be aware of what's happening around you as you're exercising outdoors for improved situational awareness. That being said, these don't come with active noise cancellation as a result, so they're going to be more, again, geared for exercise and folks wanting that transparency effect. Now, the difference between the regular and the Pro edition is that the Pro model has LDAC support. It's the higher quality audio codec that provides up to 3 times more details. So they're going to be hi-fi rated compared to the standard model that has just the typical SBC and AAC audio codec support. Also, the Pro model has slightly larger 16.2mm drivers compared to 14mm drivers on the regular version. Larger drivers, aka speakers, should theoretically pack more bass as well. And finally, the Pro model has spatial audio, and this is done using an accelerometer that is built into the buds. So as you're moving, the music will react accordingly, providing just a little bit more immersiveness. And battery life is comparable, I would say. With the battery case combined, you're getting 46 hours on the Pro versus 42 hours on the regular version. Continuous music listening time is around 11 hours on the regular versus 14 hours on the Pro, so also just a touch longer, but overall, these are pretty good numbers. Both do have quick charging support, so popping these back into their casing for 10 minutes will provide you an extra 5.5 hours of listening time on the Pro and an extra 4 hours on the regular. So opening up the box here, we have just a Soundcore card on top for both, and underneath you'll find the buds. The standard edition here has more of a slightly wider case compared to the Pro case. Is a little bit taller by contrast, but overall dimensions are not too far apart. We'll take a closer look at it in a moment. And one final difference with the Pro model is there is an additional accessory included, which is a headband loop. This, of course, is optional and doesn't actually snap into the carrying case, but if you want an even more snug fit without worrying about the buds falling out when you're doing super vigorous movement, you can clamp the left and the right buds to one another. And then last but not least, both of these will come with a standard USB Type-C charging cable, as well as the respective quick user manual. Overall, the pricing delta between the Pro and the regular variant is $40, so it's not a super big gap. Both are selling for under $180, so I would say it's competitive with this category as a whole, and honestly at this point, I would probably opt for the Pro instead because you are getting, again, more impressive drivers, higher resolution codec support, as well as slightly longer battery life for not substantially more money. But anyways, both are very well built, having a polycarbonate frame that feels decent as you're holding it. Both of these battery cases also feature USB Type-C again on the bottom here for charging, but don't have Qi wireless charging support. Pro does have a slightly more fancy hinge that you can press on the bottom key here to instantly flip open and reveals the buds in a more dramatic fashion compared to the regular here that has a more normal door that you have to open with your hands. But both of the hinges here do feel quite tight and everything closes magnetically. The regular here does have some LED lights that tells you the status of how much percent roughly is remaining in the battery case. Versus on the Pro, we have some slightly more subtle lighting accents even underneath the buds, as you can tell there, that looks a little bit more dramatic. So taking a closer look at the design of both of these buds, again, they have a permanent wing attached to them. It provides a tighter grip as compared to normal TWS buds, with this part fitting again on the back of your ear, and it's also where the battery module is housed. Now on the Pro model, we do have some more delicate accents going on, including on this entire strip. It has an almost holographic effect with the Soundcore logo, aka the musical notes that you can only see when reflecting it against the light. It actually is quite cool as a small detail. The wing is otherwise constructed out of rubber and feels quite soft and comfy, very breathable. So once again, we are able to tell that these are using pretty much normal drivers, just larger ones in this case that pump out more volume so you can still hear it even though they're not fully extended into your ear canals. Now here it is compared to the normal edition AeroFits. It still looks very elegant, but you're missing some of the more fine detail work. That being said, it's still constructed out of rubber, and also we have the same metal mesh covering the, again, 14mm drivers on these. Overall, it is quite similar, and there's also some additional microphones located at the very bottom as well. Now, the Pro versus the regular version here next to one another, you'll tell that the Pro model is a little bit larger and slightly heavier, since it does have a bigger battery in addition to larger drivers. So if you want something that's as lightweight as possible, then at least might be one area where the regular version has a slight edge over, but honestly, in my personal testing thus far, I found both versions to be quite comfortable, that it didn't really weigh me down or feel too heavy as I was listening for a few hours of music continuously. Last but not least, here's a quick demo of snapping on the magnetic headband for the Pro model. It clicks in with a satisfying thump. So shaking it doesn't accidentally drop the buds, so it does seem to be a pretty sturdy design, and again adds a little bit more of snugness to the overall fit. The charging case on the Pro edition is sometimes a little bit more cramped feeling as you're snapping it into place with the magnets, compared to on the standard version. It tends to be, in some cases, a little easier just to pop in without as much effort. That is one area where a slightly more spread out case might have a slight advantage in, as you're popping it in really quickly. It's sometimes a bit easier to do that motion. And just a closer look at the Soundcore companion app, it's the same one used to connect to all of their other products, so it's quite familiar, but pairs quickly via Bluetooth. You can check out the battery percentage remaining on the buds as well as the case, and also change some of the EQ controls. For example, going into the default Soundcore signature, or there's also a treble boost and also a podcast mode if you're listening to speech, amplifying kind of the mids there instead. Otherwise, there is a custom EQ profile that allows you to adjust the properties including trebles, the bass, by using the frequency slider yourself. That can be a more granular way of customizing the way they sound. I would have liked to see the integration of that hearing test personalized EQ mode added on. That is something that we have seen on some of the other more conventional buds from Soundcore in the past, where it plays a series of sounds, creates a tailor-made EQ just for yourself, as compared to having to tweak the frequency sliders manually. Perhaps more importantly, you can also turn on and off the spatial audio effect. Both profiles here also have a fixed as well as a dynamic head tracking profile that you can trigger. So just in summary, what happens here when you click on head tracking is it will orient the current position that you're in as the center point. And as I'm turning my head to the right, my left ear will now be hearing the majority of sound since it's closer to that center point, and vice versa if I turn in the opposite direction. So depending on how you're orienting yourself, the sound will either be louder or more quiet, and it's a pretty cool effect. Again, if you're listening to, say, a concert recording, it does bring out a more live environment, almost like you're in that venue. Similarly, if you're watching a movie, the fact that it kind of reacts based on how you're turning your head can also be quite cool for certain kind of Dolby Atmos certified films that you're watching. And it's quite nice because it's compatible with every single track compared to, say, Apple's spatial audio, where you have to listen to specialized recordings to get that effect. This is actually applying that to everything that you're listening to. On the downside, though, the effect is not going to be perfect for every single type of recording. For example, if you're an audiophile and you want a more intimate studio-like sound with as much detail as possible, then that's actually going to be best in the regular sound signature mode. Now, fixed, by the way, doesn't actually change the sound as you're rotating your head, but it just creates the effect like the sound is a little bit more separated. It's almost like another EQ mode. Otherwise, you can also tap on controls to customize what the button here on the side will correlate to. So on the Pro, we do have a physical key that you can press on, and overall it's pretty tactile and responsive. You can trigger either a single press or a double press for volume up and down, skip track, play, pause. It works well enough considering that there isn't ANC or an active transparency mode on these needed because of the open design already. If I tap on the gears icon, you'll trigger more advanced options, including turning on LDAC, so that is going to be the audio codec for nearly lossless resolution music passed through via Bluetooth, and that's also going to consume a little bit more bandwidth as a result. So if you want lower latency, if you're watching a movie or gaming, that's typically when you want to have it off. But if you're just listening to music, that can be a way to increase the audio resolution. You can even change the volume balance. If you feel like the recording is distorted to one side, the left or the right, you can also play with the slider yourself to manually adjust the sound balance. You can connect to two devices at once as well, so that can be a computer and a phone, and it will seamlessly switch back and forth between those devices as you're playing and pausing the audio. And last but not least, you can check if there are any firmware updates, and auto power off means that it will turn off after X minutes of inactivity. As for the regular AeroFit, the UI here is extremely similar. Battery life can once again be seen, and under controls, you can customize a single, double, and also a long press. So a little bit interestingly, on the regular version, you also have one additional shortcut that is missing for some reason on the Pro edition, although these are touch sensors as compared to a physical button on the Pro, which is a little bit more deliberate. However, instead of the spatial audio mode, there is only one profile, which is the 3D surround sound. It's essentially the fixed position EQ mode that also gives you a little bit more of a surround sound effect. But again, it's not dynamic since there is no motion tracker or accelerometer, so as you're rotating your head, it's not going to change the sound in real time. But very similar in terms of functionality, although one other missing feature is under additional settings, you won't find the option to turn on LDAC audio codec since that's not present on the chip of the regular edition. So moving into audio quality and performance, I was pleasantly surprised, especially by the Pro model, in terms of how punchy the bass is. The bass up branding there is really not just for marketing purposes, but it does create a real thump when you're listening to a drum beat. Any pop music or EDM tracks gets you easily energized as you're running or exercising with these. And that's kind of surprising because in my experience thus far, especially with bone conduction tech, is open style buds tend not to have as satisfying bass as conventional in-ear buds, but Soundcore has mitigated that just by packing in an extremely large driver, in this case 16 millimeters. So just by putting it close enough to your ears, you still end up hearing and feeling a lot of the vibration from the bass as a result. And it doesn't sound distorted or out of control either. It's quite tight, and once the beat is over and moves on to the next note, it's a very satisfying experience. Now on the regular edition, the bass is notably less powerful, so the larger drivers on here are definitely making a difference. Granted, the regular editions are not lacking in bass, especially when compared to other similar styled buds, such as the aforementioned Powerbeat Pros. I do feel like these were still a touch more aggressive on bass already, so very pleasant for just casual music listening and pop music. However, if you compare them side by side with the Pros, then these pack almost another level of richness in the lower frequencies. Clarity was also excellent when it comes to mids and trebles, which was very impressive for sports-oriented buds. We don't typically think of these as necessarily catering towards audiophiles, but nonetheless they were free from any static or hissing in the background when you're listening closely to music, and overall lives up to the reputation of some of the best sounding Soundcore products, which are among some of my favorites, I have to say. So this is going to be great even if you're listening to, again, acoustic tracks, classical music, pop music. Across the board, I didn't find too many faults with it. Regular edition are just a little bit more flat or maybe neutral sounding, not quite as rich, but they're clean and certainly don't have too many issues in terms of connectivity either, and in their own already provide a very satisfying experience. But like I said before, for not a huge delta in terms of pricing, I would definitely prefer the Pro editions in this case. But as it stands, I have no problem saying that these are two of the best wing and sports-oriented wireless TWS buds that I have reviewed in the past couple of years, both when it comes to sound quality being extremely clean, great comfort, not to mention pretty impressive battery life to boot as well. So you can check out more details if you're interested in the links down below if you're looking for a pair of, again, more sports and exercise-oriented buds. But for now, that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the new Soundcore AeroFit series.